Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly brilliant literary mashup by Jane Bamber. It's a novel called Fascination and Falsehoods, The Importance of Being Darcy. If you're a fan of classic literature, you already know the drill. Jane Austen gives us that razor-sharp social commentary and sweeping romance, right? While Oscar Wilde, well, he brings the witty dialogue, the totally ridiculous farces, and those unforgettable eccentricities. But have you ever wondered what happens if you just smash them together into one cohesive universe? Well, the result is this completely fresh take on beloved characters, radically altered family trees, and a remarkably comedic path to love.
Okay, let's just dive right into this by asking a question that literally shatters everything you thought you knew about the classic tale of Pride and Prejudice. Ready? What if Mr. Darcy was a foundling? I mean, think about it. In the original Austen universe, Fitzwilliam Darcy is the absolute pinnacle of inherited wealth and elite status. He's the master of Pemberley. But here, the source material throws us a massive curveball. Mr. Darcy is taken in as a foundling infant, raised entirely away from his ancestral home. His whole vibe and circumstances are totally removed from that grand estate we usually associate with him. Just imagine how that single massive change ripples through the entire social fabric of the story. And speaking of massive changes, this mashup radically alters the canon for our heroines, too. Instead of the original timeline where the Bennet sisters grow up in that chaotic, kind of relaxed country home at Longbourn with their parents, Jane and Elizabeth are actually orphaned at a young age. And guess who their new guardian is? None other than the formidable, totally overbearing Lady Catherine de Bourgh. They are placed directly under her strict, exacting care at Rosings. It completely flips the script on their upbringing and, of course, their social standing.
But wait, the surprises just keep coming. In another wild twist from the original story, Lady Anne Darcy, who, as you know, is typically deceased long before the events of Pride and Prejudice, is actually still alive. She survived her own tragic losses and settled right near Rosings in Kent. Because she's geographically and familiarly so close to the orphaned Bennet sisters, she becomes a huge inspiration to her niece, Elizabeth. She brings this completely different matriarchal energy to the story, acting as a clever, wry counterpart to all of Lady Catherine's bluster. So as the three girls prepare for a highly anticipated London season, a distinct battle plan starts to emerge. Georgiana Darcy is nearly 17 and getting ready for her debut. Lady Anne and Lady Catherine agree that Jane and Elizabeth, who are wonderfully accomplished but still unwed, should join her in society. Fascinatingly, though, they are bypassing Darcy House entirely to stay at Matlock House. The source notes this is because Lady Anne's countenance actually shades at any allusion to her tragic first marriage. So instead, they're setting up this shared base of operations to navigate all the foibles and extravagances of the first circle of society together.
Now, here is absolutely crucial context. These are not the financially struggling Bennets of the original book. We are talking about £30,000 each. Lady Catherine proudly notes that her daughters possess every advantage of fortune, beauty, and accomplishment. In this universe, Jane and Elizabeth are highly sought-after matrimonial prizes with these massive dowries. They aren't stressing about an entailment or, being thrown out into the hedgerows. They hold immense financial power, which entirely changes the dynamics of their courtship.
And this perfectly, brilliantly illustrates Lady Catherine's theatrical and frankly hilarious paranoia about that exact wealth. With three young ladies boasting £30,000 apiece under her roof in London, she declares she will be obliged to stand sentinel at the door with a saber drawn around the clock. She is utterly convinced that every penniless rake and fortune hunter in London is going to be sniffing around, professing false love just to get their hands on those dowries. It's the ultimate Austen-style exaggeration of maternal anxiety, but dialed all the way up to an almost Wildean level of theatricality. Okay, let's look at the delightfully chaotic marriage prospects within the family. First up, we have Rupert, the new young earl. Lady Catherine warns that he is a profligate rake who's nearly bankrupted the earldom, races horses in Rotten Row, and takes up with actresses. So he's completely off limits. Then we have Richard. He's sensible, he manages Pemberley, but Lady Catherine complains he is perpetually distracted, shilly-shallying about with his invalid friend named Bunbury. Now, if you know Oscar Wilde, alarm bells should be ringing right now. This is a direct, incredibly clever nod to the importance of being earnest, where Algernon uses a fake invalid friend named Bunbury as an excuse to dodge social obligations. Of course, Lady Catherine, totally oblivious to the likely fictional nature of this Bunbury character, has the future perfectly and forcefully mapped out. Jane will marry Richard. In her mind, it's incredibly tidy. Richard is already doing a great job managing Pemberley. Once Georgiana is wed or comes of age, Richard will come to Kent, run Pemberley from afar, and Jane will succeed her mother as the mistress of Rosings. According to Lady Catherine, Jane was brought up for exactly this kind of greatness.
But while Jane is anxiously hoping she won't be forced onto a cousin who has actively avoided them for years, it leaves us wondering, what exactly is the hopelessly romantic Elizabeth looking for? I mean, Elizabeth is observing all of this, Jane's anxiety, Lady Catherine's intense scheming, her cousin's ridiculous excuses, and she realizes she actually has the luxury of choice. But what does she really want?
Well, Elizabeth certainly desires the common merits. She wants good sense, intelligence, and humor, packaged nicely in a handsome masculine form. She boldly declares to her family that she could never love a man who is completely out of his wits, which, in her eyes, immediately crosses her cousin Richard right off the list. She wants someone she can love and respect. And, if she finds him, she's going to make no secret of being very well pleased.
But here's the catch. Channeling the pure, absurd comedy of Oscar Wilde, Elizabeth actually harbors a secret, highly specific requirement. She has developed a fascination, which is this intense, whimsical, and honestly entirely irrational obsession. Beyond the good sense and the handsome form, Elizabeth has a deeply ingrained, almost illogical prerequisite that her future husband simply must possess.
Heavily influenced by her favorite aunt, Lady Anne, Elizabeth secretly, and perhaps a little foolishly, longs to love a man by the name of Darcy. She has literally elevated a simple family name into her ultimate romantic prerequisite. It's exactly like Gwendolyn Fairfax in The Importance of Being Earnest, who is completely obsessed with marrying a man named Earnest, just because the name inspires total confidence. Elizabeth Bennet has adopted this exact Wildean eccentricity.
And think about the irony here. This brilliant detail sets up the ultimate comedic clash for the entire narrative. On one hand, Elizabeth is determined almost irrationally to marry a man named Darcy. But on the other hand, Lady Catherine fiercely believes that this foundling version of Mr. Darcy, the very man who happens to hold the name Elizabeth so desperately desires, is entirely beneath her wealthy, high-status daughter. The one man Elizabeth is romantically predestined to want is the exact man her guardian will forbid her to have. Which leaves us with a delightful and provocative question to wrap up our explainer today. When the earnest, highly structured romance and class anxieties of Jane Austen collide head-on with the absurd, satirical, name-obsessed farces of Oscar Wilde, who is ultimately going to get the last word? Will the foundling Darcy prove himself worthy, or will the name itself be the cause of their undoing? It's a fascinating premise, for sure, and one that promises endless humor and heart. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the classics.